Have you ever met someone who seemed perfect at first? Friendly, polished, charming. Maybe they said all the right things, laughed at the right moments, and carried themselves like someone you could trust. But later, you realize they were nothing like the person they pretended to be. That's because it's surprisingly easy to act like a good person. People learn how to wear masks, especially in a world where image is everything. Social media profiles, job interviews, even casual conversations can become performances. And the scary part, many of us don't even notice. But here's the good news. You don't need to be a psychologist to spot who's real and who's putting on a show. You just need to know what to look for. And according to both modern psychology and timeless philosophy, there are two small, everyday behaviors that reveal a person's true character better than any long speech or polished smile. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." It's true, many people are terrified of being seen for who they really are. But while they're busy hiding, their real self slips out in small ways. This video is about learning to recognize those moments. We'll look at how people treat those they don't need, and how they handle the promises they make. These two clues, simple but powerful, can transform how you see others and how you see yourself. Because if you can spot these signs, you'll never look at people the same way again. We live in a world full of interactions, some meaningful, many forgettable. But the quality of our lives often depends on the people we let into our inner circles. Choosing the wrong ones can cost us peace, trust, and even our sense of self. That's why the ability to read someone's true character isn't just useful, it's essential. The ability to observe others with awareness helps us make smarter decisions in relationships, friendships, and even business. When we look past surface-level charm and into how someone truly operates, we protect ourselves from manipulation and disappointment. But there's another benefit, and it might be even more powerful: self-awareness. Arthur Schopenhauer, the German philosopher known for his raw insights on human nature, believed that morality begins with compassion, and compassion starts by seeing the world beyond ourselves. When we learn to observe others closely, we also start to turn that same attention inward. We begin asking, how do I treat others? Do I live up to the same standards I expect from those around me? And just like that, the skill of spotting character becomes a mirror. This journey isn't about judging others, it's about protecting your peace, building genuine relationships, and becoming someone whose actions reflect integrity. When you tune into the small moments, the honest, unscripted ones, you'll start seeing people for who they really are. And maybe, you'll start seeing yourself a little clearer too. Imagine this. You're having dinner with someone new. They're charismatic, attentive, even thoughtful toward you. The conversation flows, their posture is relaxed, and their smile feels genuine. But then, the waiter brings out the wrong dish. In an instant, the atmosphere shifts. Their smile disappears. Their tone sharpens. A brief, almost invisible transformation occurs. But if you're paying attention, it speaks volumes. Suddenly, you're not seeing the version of them that's been presented to you. You're seeing the person they are when there's nothing to gain. One of the clearest and most honest indicators of someone's character is how they treat people who have no influence over their lives. These are the waiters, the delivery drivers, the janitors, the clerks at the checkout counter. They are people who, in the social power dynamic, are often invisible. Yet how we treat them is where our true selves leak out, when the performance drops and instinct kicks in. And it's in those small, unscripted moments that the truth shows up. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer once said that compassion is the foundation of morality. Not love, not justice, not success or fairness. Compassion. To him, moral worth wasn't defined by how loudly someone advocated for good causes or by their social image. It was found in the quiet, consistent practice of empathy. Schopenhauer believed that when we act kindly towards someone who cannot benefit us in any way, it's not because we're calculating some future reward. It's because we recognize the shared humanity in another person. That recognition, raw, direct, and unfiltered, is where character begins. And the opposite is also true. When someone consistently shows disregard or disdain toward people they believe are beneath them, it reveals something darker. There's an emotional reflex that happens when someone is used to asserting control. And when that reflex gets triggered, say by a small inconvenience like a coffee order being wrong or having to wait a little longer in line, you see how they handle having no advantage. And if they lash out even subtly, what you're seeing isn't strength, it's a need to feel superior. Often, that need is rooted in insecurity. Carl Jung offers a psychological explanation for this through what he called the shadow. The shadow represents the unconscious parts of ourselves, the aspects we suppress, deny, or simply don't want others to see. It's our irritation, our arrogance, our hunger for control, and our judgment. When someone snaps at a cashier or talks down to a stranger, it's often their shadow surfacing. That small moment becomes a mirror for their inner world. And unless they've done the work to become conscious of their shadow and integrate it into a whole self, it's going to leak out in everyday encounters. In contrast, someone who responds to these same moments with patience, warmth, and grace is offering something deeply authentic. They're not being kind because it will earn them something. They're being kind because that's who they are, whether or not anyone's watching. A sincere thank you, a smile to someone cleaning a hallway, a bit of extra patience in a stressful situation. These are the gestures that reflect a person's internal compass. They don't demand attention, but they signal something powerful, that this is a person who operates with respect for others, no matter the context. What's more, these behaviors are hard to fake. Charm can be performed. Politeness can be strategic. But when someone believes no one important is watching, and they still choose kindness, that's when you know it's real. This isn't just about observing others, though. It's also about turning the lens inward. It's easy to believe we're good people because we treat our friends and family well, or because we stand up for things we believe in online. But how often do we acknowledge the stranger holding the door for us? Do we thank the person who bags our groceries? Do we stay patient when a customer service rep is struggling to help us? The answers to these questions aren't just about social behavior. They're about the kind of person we're becoming. Schopenhauer's view of compassion wasn't limited to how we act in times of crisis or conflict. It was about the daily, often unnoticed, choices we make to either elevate someone or push them aside. Jung might argue that when we deny our coldness or superiority, it owns us. But when we acknowledge it and choose differently, we step closer to being whole. So next time you meet someone new, or even reflect on someone already in your life, don't be fooled by how well they talk, or how perfectly they present themselves in front of others. Instead, watch how they treat the barista, the taxi driver, the cleaning staff, or the stranger who bumps into them on the street. Do they acknowledge them? Do they make them feel seen? Or do they act as if those people exist only to serve? These aren't small moments. They're everything. They are the quiet windows into a person's soul. And if you're trying to build your own character, start here. Because the real test of who you are is never about how you treat the powerful. It's about how you treat those who can do absolutely nothing for you. There's a quiet power in keeping your word. It's not flashy. It doesn't draw attention like grand speeches or bold gestures. But few things reveal a person's true character more than what they do when they say they'll do something, especially when no one is holding them accountable. Think about it. How many people have you met who make promises easily but follow through rarely? Maybe they commit to showing up at a certain time and always arrive late. Maybe they say they'll call and never do. Maybe they agree to help, but when it's time to act, they suddenly go quiet. These aren't just forgetful habits. Over time, they become patterns. And those patterns say more about someone's reliability, respect, and integrity than any charming words ever could. Keeping a promise, even a small one, is about more than just being polite. It's about showing that you take others seriously, that you value their time, their expectations, and the trust they place in you. It's about demonstrating that your word actually means something. When someone consistently follows through, They send a quiet message. You matter. I honor my word. You can trust me. Friedrich Nietzsche saw this kind of behavior as a core part of moral strength. In his eyes, the ability to make and keep promises wasn't just a social convenience. It was a reflection of inner discipline and self-respect. He once wrote that the person who can promise and deliver on that promise is a person who has mastered themselves. They've developed a strong will. They're not driven by impulse or convenience. They understand the weight of commitment, and that weight is important, because when someone makes a promise, they create a bridge between who they are and who they intend to be. Crossing that bridge, following through even when it's hard, inconvenient, or no longer exciting, is what builds trust. That's the moment when someone's character is no longer theoretical. It's proven. Carl Jung, in his psychological framework, described the path of individuation, becoming a whole and integrated self. To him, character wasn't about perfection but about alignment. That means your values, your words, and your actions should match. When someone promises something but doesn't deliver, they fracture that alignment. They reveal that something in them, whether it's fear, laziness, or ego, is winning over integrity. Sometimes people break promises and offer excuses. I forgot, or I got too busy, or it wasn't that serious. But the reality is, if you mattered to them, they would have remembered, or they would have at least communicated honestly. That's the second test of character. Not just whether someone keeps a promise, but how they handle it when they can't. Do they own their mistake, explain it, and try to make it right? Or do they brush it off, avoid the conversation, or pretend it never happened? Nietzsche would say that the person who dodges responsibility is lacking inner strength. Jung might say they're out of alignment, refusing to acknowledge the part of themselves that failed to live up to their word. And the pattern isn't just visible in others, it exists in you too. Ask yourself, how often do you make promises to others that you don't keep? How often do you set goals for yourself? I'll start exercising. I'll stop scrolling late at night. I'll spend more time with my family. And then break those promises quietly, without accountability. This isn't about guilt. It's about awareness. Because the promises you make to yourself shape the kind of person you become. Every time you break your own word, you chip away at your self-respect, even if no one else knows. But every time you follow through, especially when it's inconvenient or hard, you strengthen your own sense of trust in yourself. And that trust becomes the foundation of your confidence. There's a psychological theory called self-signaling, which says that your brain takes cues about who you are based on how you behave. So if you consistently follow through on what you say, even in small ways, your mind starts to believe, I'm someone who does what I say I'll do. That belief fuels discipline, motivation, and emotional resilience. And that belief doesn't just stay inside, it radiates outward. People around you pick up on it. They sense whether you're the kind of person whose word means something. And they respond to that energy by trusting you, respecting you, and relying on you. Not because you're perfect, but because you're consistent. We often admire the people who make bold promises, but in truth, the people we trust the most are the ones who make quiet commitments and honor them. They're the ones who show up, who remember, who care enough to follow through. They don't overpromise, and they don't hide behind excuses. They take ownership even when no one is watching. That's character, not the big performance, but the consistent follow-through. So the next time you want to understand someone's true nature, don't just listen to what they say. Watch what they do. Do they call when they said they would? Do they keep their word, even when it costs them something? Do they take responsibility when they fall short? Those answers will tell you more than any title, charm, or reputation ever could. And if you want to become someone others can rely on, someone you yourself can be proud of, start by keeping your own promises, not just the big ones, especially the small ones, because that's where character lives, in the follow-through, in the consistency, in the quiet strength of doing what you said you would do. By now, you've probably realized something. The signs of true character aren't hidden in grand speeches or life-changing events. They're right there in the smallest moments. How someone treats a stranger, how they handle a promise, how they react when the world doesn't bend to their will. These subtle signals, if you're watching closely, can tell you just about everything you need to know. We spend so much time listening to what people say about themselves. But character isn't in words. It's in the spaces between them, in the patterns of behavior that unfold when no one's watching or expecting anything. It's in how someone behaves when there's no applause waiting, no reward on the other side of kindness, no recognition for keeping their word. Arthur Schopenhauer believed that at the root of all moral behavior is compassion, an instinctive, almost spiritual recognition that other people are as real, complex, and worthy as we are. That kind of recognition doesn't come from logic or ambition. It comes from the soul. When someone acts with kindness, without gain, they reveal not just their manners, but the depth of their being. It's not a show. It's a reflection of something deeply human, maybe even sacred. Nietzsche, often seen as harsh or cynical, actually held a profound respect for those who had the strength to live with integrity. To him, the person who keeps their promises, who bears the weight of their word, is someone who has overcome the chaos of impulse, not because they have to, but because they choose to. That kind of discipline isn't about rules. It's about self-respect. And Carl Jung, the thinker of the unconscious, reminds us that what we observe in others is often what we avoid in ourselves. He believed that real growth begins when we stop projecting, stop pretending, and start integrating. When you notice impatience in someone else, ask yourself where you might be impatient too. When you see someone dodge responsibility, ask where you might be doing the same. The world becomes a mirror, and every encounter becomes a lesson, if we're willing to look honestly. So pay attention to the small things. They're not small, they're everything.